Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. And if you've been listening for a while, I love talking to business leaders in Asia. Today, we have Chuen Chuen with us, who is a leader of leaders, right? So I talk to a lot of business leaders, but today I get to talk to someone who coaches leaders, right? Who coaches and trains leaders. So she is the founder of Acesense, Agile Leadership. So this company, right, has been named Best Leadership Training Solutions Company in Singapore as of last year. So she has a lot of accolades, right? So let me just take a few seconds, right, to name Forbes Coaches Council member, Best Agile Leadership Development Coach in Singapore in 2021, Executive Coach, Strengths Business Coach. So you talk about leaders, she is the leaders of leaders, right? LinkedIn Top Voice, of course, and she is also the author of the book, 8 Paradoxes of Leadership Agility. Chuen Chuen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob. Really nice to connect with you. We are neighbors, right? Singapore and Malaysia are so close by. I shall hop over one day and buy you coffee.
Yeah. We have been connected for some time as well on LinkedIn, and this is the first time I'm reaching out and first time we are talking and meeting as well. And yeah, so for this podcast, right, I ask all my guests, the first question is, what is your favorite Kung Fu movie?
Wow, very hard because the last time I went to watch a movie was very long ago. But you reminded me my favorite Kung Fu movie is not an adult movie, unfortunately. It's a kids movie. And I made reference to this movie in my upcoming book titled Leaders People Love. So this movie is Kung Fu Panda. Why I love this movie is because, I think there's a Po in every one of us. Okay, let me just give more context to the listeners. Po is the panda. That's why the Kung Fu Panda, right? And of course, this is a movie with lots of animals inside. You get the goose that is the panda's dad. And then all these bizarre things, and then the praying mantis, you get the tiger and everything else, right? And the snow leopard. So why I love this movie is because Po is such an seemingly unremarkable character. So simple, so plain. In many ways, I think I resonate with Po. But in Po, there's just that pure heart for Kung Fu. Pure heart to explore, experience, and taste what is Kung Fu. And eventually, against popular decision, he was like the most unpopular choice. He became the Kung Fu Panda. He became the martial artist that was given a dragon scroll. And that in our business world, in our careers, it is similar to our pursuit of success and progression. So the dragon scroll to the panda Po is almost like the promotion that we are all chasing after, the progression, the pay raise, the destination, the title, and the respect that we gain in the workplace. The part that resonated the most and why I included it in my book is the moment where he retrieved the scroll after a lot of adversities and he opened it and it was absolutely empty. There was nothing inside. There was only a golden mirror. So when you open it, it's like they're very over dramatized. He's like laughing like crazy, and then he opens it, like, oh my god, and what is inside? And then there's nothing. So it's like anticlimax, right? What are we working so hard for in life? And as demonstrated in this movie, Kung Fu Panda, it is the inner journey that's much more important than us chasing for external material stuff. And that is also the same as my own personal journey. When I was younger, I'm very ambitious. You know how, okay, we have all been young and foolish before. Young, foolish, ambitious, perhaps a little bit aggressive before. Like we come out from school, we think we can take on the world. We think we don't need to abide by any of the rules in the workplace. We will not conform. Right. And then we are very bold. So there was a time in my career where I was like that too. And that's when I got stuck. And when I got stuck, I was chasing after that trophy, that winning, that recognition from people, somewhat like the scroll. And I wasn't very successful. I had bad relationships. I had a bad reputation. I was getting nowhere. And it was only when I invested in personal development and appreciated myself for the plain Jane, the normal person next door, very much like Paul, very relatable, that you don't have to be a superstar to make a difference. And it's only when I recognize who I was in my core, then I began to change my results. That's why I like this movie so much.
That's amazing. I didn't imagine, right, today starting off my podcast, starting off the podcast with the first question and such a profound answer. And yeah, so I love Kung Fu Panda also. Like my favorite character is Master Wu Guai, right? And so he has this
Yes.
quote, right? So it's like yesterday is the past, right? And today is the present, right? So focus on today. So yeah, it's amazing. So it's such a profound way to start the podcast. So, and I also heard that you mentioned you have a book coming out, right? So this is like my style of podcast. I don't have to follow a format. We don't have to follow a set of questions. Since you mentioned the book, right? I also like to know it's Leaders People Love from I heard. So from my research, actually, I didn't find a lot of things about it. So can you tell us more about that as well?
So this book is an extension of my first one. So my first one is on paradoxes of leadership agility. I had proposed a 4-step framework that anybody can use to reanalyze and recognize the reality in the context. We have all heard leadership is contextual, leadership is situational. There's no silver bullet. There's no such thing as I do this and it's very effective here. It will be effective everywhere. Right, so we have to recognize the situation is always changing. Hence, my approach that is built on solid principles about what it means to be a good leader, good person, that I need to always take reference from. So that was first one. And when I started developing that book, the content in that book, I realized that I actually need to go broader. So in the second book, Leaders People Love, what I've done is to take readers deeper into the 5 pillars that I've developed for agile leadership. 5 areas, and the first one has to do with Kung Fu Panda, know yourself, knowing yourself, self-awareness, personal mastery, emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence. All these are very, very important. We all know these, right? Soft skills is super important, but how and when and which aspect do you start looking into? What are the areas that will make you very agile? Because you still need to read the context. You still need to update your practices so that you are relevant. Right. So that book, in a nutshell, talking about the 5 different pillars, ensuring that you prepare yourself for the disrupted workplace. How do you lead 5 generations in the workplace? How do you engage Generation Z? Definitely coaching skills, listening skills, very important. How do you create a vision that is so inspiring that people want to be part of? Right, there's a lot of educating. It's like everybody has to have this communications plan now. Every time a strategy is changed, we need a solid communication strategy. But yet communication is one of the lowest ranking in one of the studies done by McKinsey back in 2018. So they found skills that are very important for leaders. Communication is of increasing importance in the future of work, yet it's the lowest ranking item, scoring only 52 out of 100. So one of the pillars that address this thing about communication, because communication is not just me telling you. Everybody can tell, everybody can instruct. At most, I repeat. If I repeat, then I'm nagging. Right? So how can I change the way I communicate with people so that people want to follow me? How do I unpack complex concepts for them so that anybody can understand, no matter where they are coming from? So that's one of the tracks. The other track have to do with this well-being thing. Like we keep talking about burnout is on the rise, stress level is on the rise. A simple concept of letting go. How to let go? It's so difficult to practice. And why can't we let go? So one of the tracks then is to help people uncover where can I maximize my output while minimizing my input, right? Because the reality is the proportion of people who are in the working class is shrinking. but the number of jobs is increasing. So every time you lose a talent, it's becoming very hard to replace these people. And we cannot pile on more work on fewer people. That's like a perfect recipe for burnout, right? I ask everybody, I pay you double, but you have to work double. It cannot be. We only have 24 hours in a day, right? We are all getting older by the day, which means we have diminishing energy. How can you do more work? It's hard. So that changing the mindset around how can I move the needle in areas that matter with whatever resources and keeping my effort as low as possible. So instead of killing two birds with one stone, I want to kill many birds with just one stone. So it's a paradigm shift. And then lastly, our last track is on how do you embrace agility as a way of life? Like for example, okay, both of us are podcasters, right? My podcast came about accidentally. How can you capitalize on the happy accidents and learn the most from them? Because I gained so many skills while hosting my podcast as well. It has prepared me to be a great storyteller, to be able to be interviewed properly on radio, to be able to engage my guests, make them feel comfortable, which then further enhances my facilitation, my coaching skills. And it came out as an accident, right? But if we do not have the mindset of an agilist, where I am looking out for opportunities, and I say, oh, can I turn that opportunity? It's an accident, right? Can I turn it into an opportunity? Can I turn it into something else? Most people are quite close to it because there is the fear of what if I fail? And that, I think in today's context, is the part that gives people the greatest level of stress.
Yep, thanks, Chuen Chuen. That was a good summary of the book, right? So I look forward to seeing the book being published as well. So like that is like the official audio summary. So maybe you can clip it up and use it as well. But I think let's dial back a little bit. I like a lot of things that you mentioned in that, including communication, how to manage Gen Zs, which we'll come to as well. But I like that you use the word agilist, right? Agilist, and that is a word being thrown around a lot. But can you also share with our audience, like, what is an agilist?
So agilist is like, I think the best metaphor to explain it is build the plane as you fly it. Build the plane as you fly it. This metaphor is in my first book. It's not my metaphor though. It was one of the metaphors one of my former leaders in the workplace used. So the context was many of you know that I used to teach. So it was a newly set up school. Processors, we need brand new processors. We cannot import old processors from elsewhere because the school was set up to be uniquely different, right? Singapore has this punchline as well for tourism, uniquely different. So there's that trend as well. You just want to be different. You want to innovate within a red ocean. How do you create a blue ocean in the red ocean? Is by differentiation, by being uniquely different. So because the processes were not created yet, all the leaders who were hired to lead the school in the formative years, in the first few years, they're all very strong, established leaders. In the work I do with corporate is the same. If I have a team of very strong leaders, then the norming needs to happen, and it can be extremely abrasive. So the heads were fighting with each other, like, my process is better. No, then the other guy saying, no, my process is better, and nobody can come to consensus. So the head of the school then said, okay, remember everyone, we are flying the plane as we build it. And visually, you can immediately imagine, maybe you're flying, you have already taken off, and then there are parts that are like falling off. And you want to swap it out and do something very quickly so that this thing can still fly. right? Because once we have started flying, we cannot say, oh, stop, let's reverse, let's go back to the starting. Cannot. We will just crash and fall and burn, right? So being an agilist then is having this courage to continue, even when you know that things are not perfectly in place yet. Right. Those people who are in the innovation space, they will know minimum viable product, MVP. However, now every enterprise, no matter how many 100 years your history is, you have to behave like a startup. You will never know what new products will now capture the hearts of your consumer. But you cannot wait and do all the market research, validate and double validate before you launch it. It's way too late. So same for organizations, same for individuals. I'm definitely a person in work in progress. I think all of us are work in progress. Knowing that we are work in progress, can we put ourselves out there, be courageous, get ourselves in some experiments, and see what happens. So how I started my podcast is also like that. I didn't know what will happen. How I wrote my first book was also like that. I could only rely on the existing skills I had. And am I confident it helps people? Yeah, I think so. It helps the people that are in my first level, right? My first degree, people who have direct contact with. Yeah, it helps people. Let me put it out there and explain it in as simple way as possible and see what the wider community say. And I will take that feedback. And to my pleasant surprise, the experiment worked, because when I launched my first book, people from overseas started reaching out to me and said, wow, I love your book. It's so easy to read. It's unlike typical leadership books. They are so hard to read and I feel like sleeping because it's so heavy, so full of jargon and stuff like that. So being an agilist means you want to be open to opportunities to have those experiments, be okay whether it fails or it succeeds. In my case, I must say many of my experiments succeeded. That helped me grow my business. Similarly, there are also many experiments that failed, right? The important is be an agilist. Be okay to pick yourself up after you fail. Learn from the mistake and move forward. You must continue moving. You cannot stop, because once you stop, you will be left behind.
Awesome, Chuen Chuen. I love that, building the plane while you fly. That's amazing. And I think I am sort of an agilist as well. Before we started recording, I said, hey, I'm doing this podcast to talk to business leaders in Asia, and let's see what happens in 100 episodes. And I tell you, I also fail a lot. Earlier this year, I watched some of the other interviews as well, where you shared your experiences with your previous failures. One of my failures this year is I actually also had an idea, like you said, in your other podcast, you tried to sell online courses and things like that. I tried to start an online membership, and I had to stop it because it was not. But I started alone. I had about 20 members in there paying me monthly recurring. That was a model I maybe will revisit again, but I saw that it wasn't, the effort putting into it wasn't as good as the return. So and then I stopped it for a while, but then I moved on to do podcasts, all these things. So yeah, it is to be an agilist is to do just do it in a way, and then be willing to change and move on if it doesn't work out.
Correct. We cannot guarantee that our experiments will succeed, right? But there's no success until you have tasted failure a few times. So in many ways, we are similar. Like the current online course, I haven't moved to the membership model yet. I'm still figuring it out. But my business is flying anyway, right? So you got to kind of figure it out while you're building it. Right, you have to see what the opportunities available. The one successful online course I have now, this is my 4th iteration. And it's an effort of refining it for over 3 years. Of course, not all the time, not every day. But you are always looking out for learning opportunities. Like somebody may say something in a totally unrelated moment that addresses that question mark that I had about my online course, about how I should position it. And over time, the more you try it, you are also building different muscles. Like now, I'm a lot more comfortable to be interviewed and on screen and sharing anecdotes. I am tech-wise, okay, quite comfortable because after so many iterations, right? Like we all have suffered the situations where maybe you are running a session, 10 over people, and then you get so confused and where is the control panel and everything. Without those experiences, you cannot learn and grow. So the Agilist is super important.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I love that fourth iteration. So that is there's no one time succeed, because we also look up to the people who succeed. Oh wow, they are so, actually they also have many, maybe 10 iterations or something. So yeah, that is amazing way to share, and also we have to remind ourselves to be willing to fail as well. So another question I'll get, because your book is called Leaders You Love, right? So I'd like to ask you who, because now also a bit of context lah. So now communication has changed. One of the things you talk about is communication. So leaders now has a lot of ways to communicate, including Twitter or social media. So like in terms of leaders you love, who do you who do you love in terms of a leader?
Okay, so I have this cluster of leaders who have changed my life. Okay. They come from a range of places. People I worked with who were I directly reported to them. Some were my informal mentors, so they were my peers back at work. Some of them are my coaches. Okay, like I'm a coach first, but I also have my own executive coach. And all these people have very similar qualities. These people who made a difference to me. Number one, they truly want you to succeed. They see the good in you, right? You will never feel like you're not good enough for them, right? So for listeners, the question we want to ask ourselves is, are you in a workplace where your strengths are being seen and honored and validated? Or are people looking out for your flaws most of the time and then pointing them out most of the time? And how empowering is that? And because we tend to treat people the way we have been treated, we lead others the way we've been led. This negativity bias on its own is one of the greatest barriers to becoming a leader that people will love, right? As a former teacher, I told myself, okay, how do I determine my success as an educator? Or now as a service provider or a partner, strategic partner to the businesses that I support. If I bump into them along Orchard Road, okay, Orchard Road is a shopping belt in Singapore. If I bump into them on Orchard Road, would they call me? Would they say, hey, Chuen Chuen, hey, so good to see you? Or would they avoid you like a plague? Because I've seen both types happen before, right? So are we the kind of leader that others want to work for? Do we say more good things about other people, about others? Do we acknowledge what's going right with them? Or do we always make them feel small? So I think that single quality alone made a huge difference, because as a child growing up, I did not have high self-esteem. I never felt I was worthy. And if somebody were to say something about, oh, Chuen Chuen, you are so quiet. Oh, then being quiet is my biggest flaw. But with the leaders that I love, for them, being quiet is normal. Of course, you want to be quiet. That's who you are. What's wrong with being who you are? There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect. You're good enough. And that's the message that we need more leaders to propagate. so that when people go to work, they feel like they're alive, you know. They feel like they can be their best self. They feel like they can show their true self, and they don't need to disguise, hide their insecurities, because nobody knows all the answers. It's impossible, right? It's okay to be truthful. Okay, to a certain extent, I say be careful. This one must be careful because leading with authenticity, vulnerability takes finesse. We have to understand the broader context. Yeah, but to answer your question, people, the leaders who I love, they all do this for me. They just recognizing what I'm good at. They articulate it. And because they believe in me, I started believing in myself. And that's the type of leader I hope more people can become.
Oh my God, that is so gold. I love I always say this on my podcast, that is gold, because from the leaders, when you were talking, I start to reminisce about the leaders in my life. I had bad leaders, very bad leaders. I started off my career in advertising agencies. We a lot of very young and very, like you said, people versus tasks, right? In advertising agencies, it's always tasks first. Kill the people. Anyway, people die literally, and now they don't sustain anymore. Yeah, the leaders that really impacted me, like you said, you know, accept me who I am and know how to draw the strengths within me. So that is amazing, and I hope people do check out your book soon to learn more about that. But just to flip around the questions as well and make it more relatable to people, and is there a world leader or a business leader that you don't have, is okay, but that you have a favorite among those that are here or not here?
Or business leader. Maybe the closest one I can think of. Okay, I think as a figure person, it probably would be Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. I think she is trailblazing in her own way. She refuses to conform to the stereotypes so many people have tried to put on her. And at a relatively young age, when she took office, right? She was already different. And up to the point where she decided that it is time to step away, even her speech was so brave. You know, of course, how people want to perceive it, I'm like, oh, well, I actually wrote a LinkedIn post about it. Like when she announced she's not running anymore, she's resigning, there were people who say, see, that's why women can't do it. And I'm like, come on, that's like negativity bias. Why do you focus on what she's not doing versus celebrating what she has achieved and accomplished in the years before? Why are we letting that so-called resignation, or that exercising the wise choice of knowing when to step away? Right? That takes courage, right? That takes self-awareness, that courage to put herself, her family first. Why are we using that outcome to diminish her contributions in the past? So I don't know. The last I heard, she's writing a book. I think all these lessons, yeah, we must learn from. A more recent example would be Michelle Yeoh, right, from Malaysia, right? So she strived for so many years, so quite similar to the Jacinda Ardern's kind of energy, right? It's very similar because it's about not being put in a box. It's about pushing back on stereotypes and norms when at the right time, in the right way. Sometimes we may not say something very combative openly, but we must keep the fire burning, you know, to not conform, because you know it is the right thing not to conform. right? Not conforming is the right thing for you. So
Yeah.
these two ladies, I refer to them a lot more.
Great choice. Great choice. Those two are highly mentioned as well. And yeah, you mentioned a LinkedIn post. So most of my listeners and audience are from LinkedIn, and a lot of people who would watch this or listen to this are from LinkedIn. So one thing that you mentioned that is in your upcoming book is how to lead the Gen Zs, right? So a lot of things that you mentioned that is in your book, like the burnout part, communication. So it's now very different. Burnout, communication, and mental health are at the forefront right now of leadership, right? So how is it different when, when the leaders on LinkedIn, when the business leaders, etc., when they manage Gen Z, how is it different?
So my suggestion on how they can lead differently.
Yeah, how they can lead differently, and why do they have to do so?
Okay, very pragmatic, okay, appealing to all the pragmatic people out there. If you want to pick and choose, you will simply be unable to find enough people. You won't be able to find, because statistically we are not replacing our population, right? A lot more people want to explore other industries. So if you lose an experienced staff, it will be harder for you to replace that staff with a person of similar skills and experience. So we have to accept that career mobility is going to be part of the DNA of the workforce of the future. So pragmatic reason, if you want to make sure you have enough human beings to drive your business, you got to hang on to your people. That's number one. So second point is, if you don't have followers, you can't call yourself a leader, right? So is your choice, is a choice of being obsolete or a choice to stay relevant. So then statistically, we know that Gen Zs will become the majority of the workforce very soon, very, very soon. It's undeniable. It's undeniable. But the complexity is that we will have about 5 generations in the workplace. People are living longer. We don't have enough young people to propel the economy. So we need people from older generation to stay employed. And the fact is they all have different needs and wants, because their priorities are shaped by the experiences. And the biggest one for Gen Zs would be the COVID-19 pandemic. It has changed the way they look at life, money, success, meaning and purpose. So we have to understand all this. I know for listeners, they will feel very overwhelmed. It's like, where to start? Where to start? So actually, the way to start is very simple. So what I always try to do is draw on first principles. What is the most important for leaders? For anyone to be effective in leadership, your followers are the best judge. Your report card has to come from the followers, right? Are you inspiring? Are you able to make them better than they were before? Are you able to bring people together and achieve meaningful goals for the business, for society, for the consumers you serve? Your followers give you that report card. But the problem is we don't ask the followers what they want. Many of the leaders that come and work with me, this is one of the first blockers. This is like the way we parent. We parent the way we were parented. We were brought up. And we never ask our kids, what's your preference? What will make sense for you? We forget that they are unique individuals, We thought that they are exactly like us just because they came from you. You think they're exactly like you, which is not correct. Not correct. So the first mindset that leaders need to shift is to be follower-centered. Follower-centered. That is the best way to start. So no matter whether your employee is a baby boomer, silent generation, if they're still working, Gen Z, young, old, millennial, it doesn't matter. Ask people what they want, because you need to lead people the way they want to be led. Right? And earlier we spoke about communication as well. in the work I do with leaders to become better communicators, we always focus on the wrong thing. We keep focusing on ourselves. But if you spend so much time thinking about what you want to tell people, you can't be focused on the audience, because the audience is the one who will give you the report card to tell you whether you are a great communicator or not. So it's all back to the same first principles. Am I follower-centric? Am I listener-centric? Am I other-centric? Or am I always starting from me as the center of the universe? So there's a paradigm shift. Of course, fundamentally, we cannot say we cannot be the center of the universe. That's counterintuitive. It's not possible. We can only see the world from our own eyes, right? But is that one more layer of being conscious of what your audience wants, then you will be able to tailor your approach. Then you'll be very agile. So there's no like silver bullet. It's about having the conversations, ask the question, be interested in people. Then you know how to lead them. I also want to caution people, when we look at our workforce in generations, they generally have some characteristics. There are also people who are different. We are all unique. Like I am a very early millennial. I don't think I behave like a typical millennial. I might not. Sometimes I'm like a older generation. Sometimes I'm like a younger generation. Because ultimately it's the individuals, right, that matters the most. So you will have to go and ask them, what do you want? What's meaningful to you? How can I support you? Ask these questions.
Awesome. That is, as I would say, that is so gold. Yeah, people think about communications, they think about what they want to say, and they should have more communication and to understand and empathize with their audience and of course their followers as well. So last question before we go. So this podcast, as I mentioned earlier, is to talk to business leaders in Asia. Okay. So I don't know if there's a stigma, but Asians are a bit different than Western leaders. Right, a bit different. So
sure,
what is your advice? So this podcast, my audience are on Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia. So what is your advice to the very typical Asian leaders out there?
The playground that we want to thrive in, I think that is the one that matters the most. What is your playground? Where is your playground? What are the characteristics of that playground? Is it an all Asian? Is it an Asian exposed to Western culture? Is it Western, Middle Eastern, is it Asian? Everything, is it a mishmash? I'm sure in Malaysia you have this thing called rojak. Yeah, so same. So just think of it as rojak. Everything is mixed together, full of diversity, colors, excitement. Know your context. Know the rules of the playground. Then you have to decide what is the role you want to play in that playground. What's the role you want to play? We need to spend a lot more time uncovering who we are as leaders and what does meaningful impact look like. Remember, we started the conversation today talking about Kung Fu Panda, talking about Po. When we open the dragon scroll, you will only see your reflection. So for an Asian leader, open it. Look at your own reflection. Who do you see? Do you see a manifestation of yourself that is a result of societal expectations? Because is that the way we need to shape our lives? For example, if I conform to what society expects of an Asian woman, I would have failed. Because they will look at my success as, are you mom? Are you a good wife? And things like that. Oh, forget about careers. Careers are not important for women, right? It's like not too long ago, it's like my aunts and my relatives will say, oh, girls don't need to study so much. They will get married and bear children. That's the primary job. But because my mom is quite progressive and we are a family of 3 girls, we say, no, I will support my girls to be educated. As long as they are capable, they want to do it, I will support them. So I was fortunate in that sense. So for the Asian leaders to look at themselves, am I being restricted by what society expects me to be? Or am I the best leader I should become, I must become, so that I can have a meaningful life? The exercise I like to give to all leaders, imagine your end of life. Okay, the sad truth, the hard truth is we are all one day nearer to death. We are progressing towards end of life. The clock is ticking. And when the clock is ticking, knowing that your time on earth is limited, what is the impact? What is the legacy you want to leave behind? That's the question. Then we will think about, do I want to confirm? Do I not want to confirm? What is my playground? What is needed? What's the role I want to play? Then you go play it.
Awesome. That is a great way to end this podcast. Ask yourself what legacy you want to leave behind.
Yes.
So yeah, I really love this conversation, Chuen Chuen. So before we started the recording, you asked me, like, hey, what do you want to achieve from the podcast, right? So I really relate to your story about the dragon scroll, right? So besides, you know, business and things like that, one of the main things I get from this podcast is learning from people like yourself. So my dragon scroll, the inner work that I do is speaking to people like you and learning through my many episodes as well. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom here.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the space and the chance to share what I know about leadership and working with people.
Thank you so much.